Chapter 31. Lost Souls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Colt set foot on the first step, the stairs began to glow with blue lines. The soft light illuminated the path for them as they steadily descended into the earth. Once all three of them were partway down the staircase, the doors above them slowly ground to a close, creating a loud bang as they did so. Colt frowned because he knew that loud noises like that one were usually meant to provide an atmosphere for the rest of wherever a player was exploring. This doesn't look good. It reminds me of dungeons in other games. I thought this was meant to be a simple quest that just had a few extra mobs. Hey Exile, you still sure we're enough for this? Donna asked with a smirk as she noticed the look on his face. Maybe. Once we see what we're up against, we can make a decision. Colt quickly replied to stop her from saying anything else. He did not want them to get cold feet or lower their own morale. It took them at least 10 minutes to get halfway down, and from there, they could see a pair of giant blue stone doors that should lead deeper inside. Colt paused as he judged their height and decided that this quest was most likely a bad idea right now. It was giving him the vibe of needing a complete party. Yeah, screw this. I know it's worth 5 stat points for everyone, but this doesn't look good. Donna decided to say her own thoughts first just to make it clear where she stood. I'd like to have a look, but I have to agree with Donna. I'm not as strong as you two, so I'll probably die in there. Beans refused to take her eyes off of the doors as if she were afraid that they would open up at any minute. The pair did not even wait for Colt to say anything, choosing to turn back on their own. The moment that they took the first step back to the surface, Colt pounced into action. Run! Colt yelled as he slammed his shield into a bony arm that suddenly shot out of the dirt wall to try and grab Donna. You have attacked Lost Soul, weakened, divine power damage check. Enemy endurance 2. Your endurance 10. Your divine power is superior. You have dealt 0.8 HP. New milestone. Lost Soul, weakened. 1 out of 100, the hand burst into black dust as he struck it. However, the walls had come alive with wriggling bony limbs as they tried to pull their bodies from the dirt. They're weak. Just force your way through. Colt shouted, thinking that this would be easy as he smashed 2 more with his axe. A scream interrupted his thoughts from up ahead as he sensed Bean's HP take a sharp dip. Don't let them claw you. Their attacks are based on authority, and it's rated at 10. Beans shouted down to Donna and Colt as Lost Souls started to fill the staircase ahead of them like a wall. Colt studied how they looked. They were blackened skeletons wearing degraded commoner-like clothing. Not a single one had a weapon or armor. If their authority is at 10, then they can't hurt me as long as I block with the shield. But if they swarm me, they can do a steady stream of minor damage until they wear me down. Colt felt like something was not right as he cleared a path towards Beans. He made use of the empty space at the end of the stairs by forcing several of these lost souls off at once. Unfortunately, it did not count towards his new milestone. When he glanced over the edge, he noticed that they were still moving. I guess they don't take fall damage. As he glanced towards the top, he noticed more and more of these mobs filling the stairs. It almost felt like an impossible task for the 3 of them to return to the surface. Donna yelled as she grabbed one of the lost souls and pummeled it with her fist while Bean screamed like a woman possessed, and Sparta kicked the closest mob off the edge. Colt focused on blocking any attacks aimed at them to preserve the team's health as much as possible. The weight of the crowd above them pushed down as they clawed at them, dealing damage. We can't last like this. Even if I use bonfire. Colt cursed as his lost soul, weakened, milestone updated to 17 out of 100. Wait. This is supposed to be impossible. Colt glanced back down the staircase and noticed the crowd was significantly smaller in that direction. Most of them appeared to be the lost souls that their group had thrown off the edge. Guys. We need to go down. Trying to get out of here is the trap. Colt shouted to make the women shift their offensive to the other direction. Are you mad? What will we do if they all crowd in behind us? Donna shouted over her shoulder. And what will you do if we get to the top, but the doors don't open? Look at the situation. It seems like they're trying to prevent us from escaping, but I think that's to distract us from the real answer. Colt shouted back as he broke away from them to force his way downstairs. Damn. Beans, let's go after Exile. We can't make it through these mobs without him anyway. Donna growled as she became pissed off with Colt for leaving them behind. Colt swung his axe from side to side as he ducked between a pair of groping hands, sending 2 more lost souls to oblivion in the process. Colt started to ignore many of the attacks and focused more on clearing the path as quickly as possible. Lost souls, weakened. 23 out of 100, 29 out of 100, 37 out of 100, Colt panted as he finally set foot on the ground in front of the blue doors. Almost there. Chapter 32. No way back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you wish to enter the Tomb of Olivia? Recommended level 3. Colt read the notification in his mind as quickly as possible as soon as he touched the doors. He ground his teeth and accepted to enter since they had no other real choices right now. The doors suddenly became transparent instead of opening, causing Colt to stumble as he was pressing against it. He slid through the blue barrier and turned to see Donna and Beans rushing after him, closely pursued by the lost souls. Colt braced himself to intercept the mobs if they followed the women beyond the barrier. His muscles tensed up as Donna and Beans crossed the threshold. The lost souls slammed on the barrier. Unable to continue the chase. Colt sighed in relief as the women collapsed to the ground to catch a breather. The mobs growled at them from the other side as if they were furious that their prey had escaped them. Colt shook his head as he walked away from them, and the barrier turned solid again. He paused to look at the area they had entered, which featured smooth white walls, ceiling and floor. Blue orbs of light ran along the ceiling, allowing the group to see clearly. This should be a safe zone. Colt glanced around before activating his bonfire spell. His flaming orb that appeared gave the trio a feeling of warmth as their HP regenerated. Colt recovered to full health, which was to be expected since he had taken very little damage. However, the women barely touched on 75%, according to his senses. To be fair, they had not fully recovered earlier in Valheim, so this was a good result. Ugh, I really need to start investing in authority. Beans complained as she appreciated her healthy-looking HP bar. I wonder what spells I can get. Colt glanced at her for a moment. If he were to be truthful, he really wanted to know what divinities they held. However, he felt it would be rude to ask. Beans seemed to realize this as she smiled at him. I'm the goddess of fishing. Beans said as if she were ashamed. Donna's is better. She's the goddess of the harvest. Beans completed the last part over the shouts of Donna, who was trying to get her to shut up. Although they were working together, she did not want Colt to know too much about them. After all, they might end up as enemies in the future. Seeing her discomfort, Colt decided to tell them that he was the god of the hearth, which he had left out during his explanation on authority and divine spells. Yours seems pretty handy, though. It can be used for healing all the way out here. Beans excitedly said with a glint in her eyes. Do you think ours will do the same? How should I know? Colt chuckled as he looked at the two of them. They seemed to be pondering over what kind of spells they could gain. Let's move on. We can't wait here forever. Their group slowly proceeded through the long hallway with Colt in the lead. However, a few minutes passed before they ran into a dead end. What the hell? Colt ran his hand over the wall blocking the way forward. What's up with this? Beans and Donna seemed just as confused as he was. They looked around and even walked back up the hallway, searching for anything they might have missed. But it was just one straight hallway with a dead end and a blue barrier. Did we find an area that isn't open during the beta? Donna asked as they returned to the door. I wouldn't have thought so. They usually wouldn't put quests into the game that can lead to those places during a beta test. Colt felt frustrated, but they had agreed to quit their exploration. Maybe they needed something else to press forward or to meet a hidden requirement. The trio prepped themselves to fight through the lost souls that should still be waiting on the other side. However, when the barrier turned translucent, they were met with the sight of a new hallway that branched off in 3 different directions. Where's the way back? Beans suddenly shouted in a panic. I don't think there is a way back. Only forward. Colt sighed. He hated it when developers played mind games. The answer was in front of them the whole time. The corridor was just a way to make them waste their time. So what way do we go then? Donna asked as she looked at each branching tunnel in turn. Colt frowned while trying to decide. Truth be told, he was unsure. There might only be one answer, all of them might be right, or maybe they were supposed to separate. I'd rather stick together. Let's try the center path first. Colt walked off as soon as he gave his decision. However, just like before, they met a dead end. They wasted time checking the other 2 branches first, but they were just the same. The trio sighed as they walked back to the door. Playing this trick once was fine. But twice. That was too much. When they placed their hands on the door, nothing happened. Damn it. Colt cursed as he glared at the blue door. We have to separate. 1 for each path. Oh, hell no. Donna replied. What are we going to do if we run into mobs? We barely survived those lost souls from before. You might be fine, but we definitely won't be. Or is that your plan? So you can steal our stats. Colt looked taken aback by her words, even if they did make some kind of twisted sense. You really think I like this? We have no idea what we'll be facing further inside. And besides, we don't exactly have any other options. Donna, I don't want to do this either, but Exile is right. We have to do this. There's no way back. Beans cut in before giving a slight smile. Chapter 33. Devout souls, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Donna looked helpless when even her friend was against her. Fine. If you're right, it's not like we have any other option except to stay here and rot anyway. So, we're all agreed then? Colt asked as he glanced at the 2 women. Both of them nodded, although Donna was still somewhat reluctant. Colt chose to take the center path while the girls took one of the side ones each. When Colt reached the end of his, he could see a blue, glowing rune that he did not understand glowing on the wall of the dead end. It really is designed to split us up. He sighed as he looked around one last time to make sure that he was not missing anything else. So what? Do I just touch it? Colt reached out to place his hand on the rune while gripping his shield tightly. At the moment of contact, he was engulfed by blue light. Colt found himself standing on a stone platform suspended over a canyon with a single bridge leading to a door when he opened his eyes. Teleportation. Or some kind of illusion. Colt wanted to try and understand as much as possible about the tomb in case they failed. That way, he could return at a later date while being more prepared. It looks like there's only one way forward. Colt thought as he glanced at the canyon walls in case there was a secret path hidden in them. Colt steadily approached the bridge, and a bright blue apparition appeared before he could reach it. The phantom was of a gorgeous woman with supple curves. However, her expression was lifeless, and there was no telling what color her clothing, skin or hair was supposed to be. Everything was just the color of the bright blue glow emanating from her. Welcome, Challenger. The apparition said in a flat tone. I am the last will of Olivia. If you are listening to this message, then I have fallen during the assault, and you have found my final resting place. So this is Olivia. Why does this one seem to be so lifeless compared to Jarxos? Colt wondered as he waited for her to continue. If you wish to continue, be warned. You will be tested by my devout souls, who survived the fall. Defeat them, and I will acknowledge you of being worthy of inheriting the final piece of the first flame that my body still carries. HP and DP fully recovered. Colt raised an eyebrow as blue light streamed into him while a notification arrived at the same time. Final piece of the first flame. So that means that there are other pieces out there somewhere. Colt frowned as he realized that this would either turn into a quest chain or finding clues to each piece might be down to your own personal luck. The apparition of Olivia faded away and left Colt standing alone at the edge of the bridge. Since she healed me, I can assume that the bridge itself is probably going to be the stage for the test. Maybe it's just the first test in a series, or it's the only one. She said devout souls, so I should expect a variation of the lost souls we fought outside. Sure enough, when Colt placed a foot on the bridge, the door at the opposite side opened up. However, he did not like what he saw. Golden humans marched out wearing full armor and wielding spears with round shields. They marched across the bridge like a well-trained army that stuck close together. How am I meant to beat that? The squad of devout souls marched in a square of 4 by 4. Which was the perfect amount to take up the width of the bridge. This prevented Colt from trying to kite them or rush past them. Maybe they'll come onto the platform. There's more space here. Colt's frown deepened. No. Letting that happen will be suicide. They'll be able to surround me. Colt saw no other way around it but to face them head-on. He could only hope that they were weaker than they appeared. Colt charged towards one edge of the formation. As soon as he came within striking distance, the devout souls lunged with their spears. Most of them hit his shield and caused a rebound effect for those wielding them. However, a few managed to strike his left side. You have been attacked by devout soul, weakened, divine power damage check. Your endurance 9. Enemy authority 11. Your divine power is inferior. You have been dealt 0.3 HP. 0.3 HP, 0.3 HP, Colt's shield slammed into the front line at that point and knocked several devout souls off balance. 4 of them stumbled and fell into the canyon, causing Colt to grin broadly as a quarter of the enemy numbers were taken out in one blow. 41/50 HP left. The trade-off was worth it. Colt quickly retreated out of reach of the spears as they attempted to strike at him again. The devout souls in the rear line moved to fill the gaps, turning the square formation into a rectangle. 12 enemies left. Maybe this won't be so hard. 0.3 HP, 0.3 HP, another 4 devout souls fell into the canyon as Colt utilized the same strategy again. Now that their numbers were cut in half, he used minor blessing, recovering 10 HP in the process. 45/50 HP left now. Colt frowned as he wondered if the girls had received the same challenge. If they had, then there was no way that he could think of for them to survive it. After all, neither of them had any spells at all, let alone ones for healing. Hopefully, they can surprise me and make it through. It seems like it is supposed to be a party quest, but so far, there hasn't really been anything that someone could not have done on their own. Colt charged at the remaining devout souls with a calm and collected expression after he had that thought. The sounds of their battle echoed throughout the canyon as they exchanged blows. Chapter 34. Helpless. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt sighed as he used minor blessing to bring himself back up to close to full health. He had struggled to finish off the last few remnants of the devout souls as they became wise to his strategy. It also helped the devout souls that the more he got rid of, the more space they had to maneuver. He had almost fallen off the edge himself when they first dodged his charge. Luckily, one of the others smashed him with their shield, which stopped him in time. Colt was unsure whether it was done on purpose or not, but it no longer mattered. Colt glanced towards the open door at the end of the bridge. Let's see what you guys were protecting. He kept his axe and shield at the ready. just in case there was a surprise waiting for him. As soon as he crossed the threshold of the doorway and left the abyss behind him, the doors ground to a close. New, blue lights lit up the new area for Colt to catch a glimpse of what was waiting for him. There was another bridge spanning another canyon. A circular platform took up the center of it. However, 3 devout souls were standing there waiting for him. One was holding the standard spear and shield he had dealt with in the last area. The second held 2 one-handed axes, while the last one had a sizable 2-handed hammer. Why does it look like it should be easier? Colt was apprehensive about the new situation. Just because it looked like it would be easier did not mean that it would be. In fact, there was a good chance that it would mean the opposite. Colt started to move towards them, and the devout souls readied their weapons but did not move. It was as if they were waiting for him in the small circular arena. Colt eyed them carefully as he tried to imagine how a fight with them would go. The only problem was that he only had the other devout souls to base the strength of these 3 on. He frowned as he noticed the devout souls twitch as he was about to take another step. I guess this is the line. They'll probably attack the moment I cross this space. Colt prepped his shield to receive the first blow as he rushed forward. The soul who had the shield and spear came forward to meet him. It swung the spear in a wide arc instead of thrusting it, which caught Colt off guard. It was a very player-like thing to do, which made these mobs feel more natural. As Colt blocked the spear, he was flanked by the other 2. A pair of axes hit his shield with such force that splinters actually broke off from it. Just as he was surprised by that, he felt a dull pain in the right side as the devout soul with hammer struck. 0.5 HP, Colt gaped at the damage he had just been dealt. It was the highest amount of damage he had ever taken in a single strike. They're a lot stronger than the others. It doesn't help that they actually work together. Colt lashed out towards the hammer, wielding one only for it to block his strike using the handle of its weapon. Colt coughed as the shield bearer slammed into him, winding him in the process. A sharp pain assaulted the back of his neck, and more damage was done. 0.4 HP, Colt immediately activated Minor Blessing again at this point to restore his health to full. However, he felt uneasy with how quickly they had forced his hand when he had not hurt any of them yet. He caught sight of the hammer swinging towards his head and chose to duck below it. Colt hacked at the devout soul's leg with his axe, but no damage was done. As he came up behind the mob, he struck with his shield. Damn it. Nothing. Colt had to move quickly to block the spear that thrust towards his throat. Using both his weapon and shield to parry the blows launched at him, Colt was forced into a passive battle. None of his attacks could hurt any of the 3, which annoyed him greatly. How the hell are you meant to get through this? His first thought was to toss them off the edge. But none of them took the bait. They were cautious with their footing, and the other 2 would always prevent him from singling one of them out. Colt was beginning to believe that the challenge was unwindable at his current level. L.RG still, he refused to go down without a fight. The dual axe wielder hooked his axes over the edge of Colt's shield before pulling on it, preventing him from accurately deflecting the attacks of the other 2. 0.5 HP, 0.5 HP, Colt was losing his cool as he activated Minor Blessing again. Just as he recovered, he felt a solid kick land in the crease behind his left knee. His leg buckled beneath him, forcing onto one knee as he blocked an overhead hammer swing. Colt grunted as he absorbed blow after blow as they rained down on his shield. There's nothing I can do. Colt sighed reluctantly as he struggled back onto his feet. For more blows made it past his shield in quick succession. 0.5 HP, 0.5 HP, 0.5 HP, 0.5 HP, for the 3rd time and the 4th during this fight, he was forced to use Minor Blessing. These 2 uses meant that his DP had run dry, and he could only rely on himself for now. Colt put up a good fight until he was kicked to the ground by the dual axe wielder. As the devout soul swung his axe downwards, he was suddenly struck by the hand wielder by accident. Colt noticed that the devout soul seemed to be in pain from the blow. His eyes went wide as he stared at that reaction. It's not a test of brute force, but of your technique. Finally, Colt had an idea of what was expected of him. Chapter 35. Trap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Having no DP left meant Colt only had one chance to make this work. However, his timing would have to be perfect. The three devout souls moved to flank him yet again. Except for this time, that was precisely what he wanted. Colt waited to see which of them would make the first move with a frown upon his face. Eventually, the one wielding the spear thrust towards him as the hammer wielder stepped in from the side. Colt grinned as he sidestepped towards the dual-axe wielding devout soul, who did not move. As the tip of the spear passed by him, Colt hit its side with his shield, forcing it to change its trajectory. The spear's longer range allowed it to force the hammer wielder to a stop as it pierced his shoulder. However, Colt ignored this, knowing that the dual-axe wielder should make a move now. Colt heard the footsteps behind him, which told him the other opponent was attempting to take him by surprise. There was a brief pause in those steps when they got pretty close, and that told Colt that the mob had steadied its stance to take a swing at him. Colt spun towards the left side as he moved backwards, intending to place himself behind the mob. At the same time, he bashed with his shield the moment he caught sight of the devout soul, pushing it towards the spear wielder. There was a slight crunch as the axes hacked at the arm holding the spear. Colt reacted on instinct and slashed at the axe wielder's back. In the heat of the moment, he had forgotten that he was unable to harm them, but something surprising happened. As soon as his axe struck, all three of them shimmered slightly before they withdrew their weapons from their allies. The three of them turned to face Colt, who backed off and prepared himself for the next attack. However, the devout souls just stood there for a few moments before dissolving into motes of light. Colt almost dropped his weapon from the shock. He quickly scanned the entire platform as if he were expecting something else to appear. However, nothing did. At the far end of the bridge where it met the canyon's wall, the rocky surface faded away to reveal a pathway forwards. Is that really it? Colt felt somewhat deflated to discover it was that easy to pass the test. If he had worked it out sooner, he could have saved his DP. However, when he thought about it, he wondered how many players would be able to figure it out in the heat of the moment. Colt took a few deep breaths to calm his mind for whatever the tomb would throw at him next before making his way towards the opening. However, when he passed through, there was a large, open cavern. Several treasure chests were scattered around the room while a large marble box stood in the center. Why does that look like it could be a coffin standing up instead of laid out flat? Colt shivered as he felt an imposing presence emanating from it. The whole room felt rather morbid and was sending warning signals to his brain, making him feel like this was somewhere he just was not meant to be. It's just a game. But this feels so creepy. Even in other games, they don't manage to make you feel this way when you're in a tomb. Colt wondered if he should try the chests, but he was worried that it might be a trap of some sort. Which was a perfectly reasonable assumption. The only problem was that Colt had no idea how to check for such things in this game yet. He could only look around for anything unusual, but considering this was the first treasure room he had seen in the game, he had no idea what he should have expected anyway. His eyebrows took a dip into a frown as he realized his predicament. What should I start with then? The treasure or the creepy coffin? Colt sighed as he decided to inspect the marble structure. His boots created scuffing sounds against the uneven rocky ground as he slowly walked forward. However, a soft blue glow came from it when he was a mere 10 steps away. Olivia's ghostly apparition made her appearance by walking out of the marble surface that was facing Colt. Congratulations on making it here, Olivia said in a flat tone as if she did not mean it. As stated, you can take every treasure in this room. Colt's expression became dumbfounded as he stared at the phantom. That can't be it. Is this a trick? There's no trick. You are qualified to receive these last few treasures of mine. But, wasn't the test too easy? Colt felt helpless when faced with this situation. He was sure that this should have been a lot harder than what it was. Or at least, that was what his gamer's intuition was telling him. Olivia stared at him for a while before speaking slowly. Upon my death, there was not a lot of divine power left. This tomb should be the best that I could manage at that time. Colt raised an eyebrow as he mulled over those words. Is this just something of a taster? To get the players used to the tombs of dead gods? Colt felt like that was what could be going on. As if this were a training mission for the real things that were likely scattered all over the game world. Now, are you ready to receive my last remaining piece of the first flame? You seem to be the god of the hearth. You are lucky that your divinity is a good match for it. Olivia's phantasm nodded slightly as she looked Colt straight in the eyes. What would have happened if my divinity was not a match for it? Colt could not help but ask this question. Call it his personal curiosity, if you must. That's simple. I would never have offered it to you in the first place. Chapter 36. Revelations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt hummed as he thought about Olivia's response. Does that mean if I come across tombs that aren't compatible with me, I can't claim their best items? It was a disappointing revelation, but it was also a unique idea. It would make the competition far harsher between those who could claim the legacies left behind. Well, hopefully, I've got a head start on this one, and nobody else has claimed any pieces of the first flame. The only thing that bothered Colt was where the other pieces may be. This would clearly take a long time to complete if he wanted to find every piece. Wait. She never said how many pieces there are. Are you ready to accept my legacy? Olivia asked in her usual emotionless voice. Colt was startled out of his thoughts before he hastily replied. Yes. Olivia raised a hand towards Colt, and a small golden flame hovered in the air for a moment. Colt's eyes were dazzled by it. It gave off a sense of comfort and extreme danger at the same time. The flame slowly floated through the air towards Colt, who reached out to take it. However, the flame dodged his grasp and sped into his chest. A soothing sensation swept throughout his body, making Colt feel highly comfortable. It was almost an addictive feeling that took a few minutes to fade away. Congratulations! You have obtained a piece of the first flame, milestone first flame. 1/5, first flame fragment January 5th, description. Reduce the cost of all fire-based divine spells by 1 DP, to a minimum cost of 1 DP. Collect all pieces to refine your element into a higher state. New divine spell received. Divine, cleansing flame, cost. 1 DP per second, description. A stream of divine flames can be shot from your weapon. The fire will cause damage equal to your authority per second. The fire will remove any negative status from yourself upon activation and allies upon touch, as long as your authority is greater than the caster's. Colt's left eyebrow arched as he read the notifications. At least now he knew how many pieces there were in the game world of the first flame, but what did it mean about refining his element? The new spell is pretty nice, though. It fits in with my current set of abilities and finally gives me an offensive option. It seems the bonding went well. Now, for the second part of my legacy. Knowledge. Olivia did not give Colt time to think before a beam of blue light shot from her hand to strike him in the forehead. Colt's vision went blurry for a moment before he came to his senses. He felt enlightened by what Olivia had shared with him. That was because despite how short it was, it answered so many questions. There are 4 main elements that every divinity is based on: fire, water, earth and air. Then there are 2 divine elements. Light and darkness. Colt hummed as he digested the information. A player's element would be decided by the divinity that they chose. In his case, he decided to be the god of the hearth, which is linked to fire. That much was easy to understand. However, it seemed that each player would also have one of the two divine elements, which depended on their alignment as perceived by their followers. So if a player only asked their followers to do things that were generally considered evil acts, they would become a dark god. The player's spells would then be tainted by the darkness element. If the player was helpful and performed good deeds, then their spells would carry the light element. However, Olivia did not share what the pros and cons of each of these two elements were. Instead, the information went on into a brief description about a player's tiers. At tier 0, like he was now, Colt was considered a household god. One that had authority over an everyday thing for most NPCs. At tier 1, he would become an elemental god. Which meant that he could gain spells associated with his element. Cleansing Flame did not count since that was granted by the first flame fragment. At tier 2, he could gain another, more advanced authority. Apparently, by this stage, he would be considered a national god. Or the other name for it was a true god. Since below this tier, a player's influence would be minimal. At tier 3, he would become a dual elemental god. This meant that he could choose one of the other three main elements to become a part of his foundation. The next part was where things would become tricky. Because after tier 3, a player would be considered as a higher god. At tier 4, players would take control of an authority that could significantly affect the mortal realms. The information was vague on what these authorities might be, but it would certainly be connected to one or both elements that a player had chosen. At tier 5, players would become a calamity god. Which meant that they would have even greater power in both the divine and mortal realms. Apparently, the power they would wield would be so great that they would be able to wipe out entire cities or regions in the mortal realms. Of course, each calamity that could be chosen was linked to either one or both elements belonging to a player. Finally, at tier 6, they would become a law god. Meaning that they would have jurisdiction over a fundamental law of the game world. The benefits of such a thing in the game were unfathomable. Colt was excited by this information. Who would not be? But there was a catch. There was a limited amount of authorities available at each tier. So say there were 300 different ones at tier 0. There might only be 200 at tier 1, and it'll just get smaller the higher you go. Colt frowned deeply as he reviewed that information. Meaning a player can get stuck at a lower tier because there's no authority left to choose that will let them advance. This had Colt worried, which was understandable. It was just another factor in the game that fueled the fires of conflict between players. However, it was the next part that really got him sweating. Chapter 37. Even Gods Die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The game system had supplemented the next piece of information that he had received. Olivia had shared details on how gods could die. At first, he did not think much of it until the game's notification came in. When one of the following things happened, a player's account would be permanently banned from the game. So, first off was the obvious. When a god lost all of its believers, they would die. But, there was a quicker way than to hunt down every believer. That was to just wipe out all of their oracles. The reasoning was simple: without an oracle, there was no way to make their will known to their believers. With each tier that a player obtained, they would gain an extra oracle slot. Making for 7 in total if a player made it all the way to tier 6. If an oracle died of natural causes, then the player could name a new oracle to take their place. But, if they died in battle or were assassinated, then it would take 3 months in real time before they could name a new oracle. So, no matter how powerful a player became, they would always have a weak spot. So it meant that the players really had to pay attention to the NPCs. Just when he thought that was the end of it, he had been hit with another method. When a player's stats could no longer support their divinity, then they would die. So say a tier 3 god lost enough stats to be comparable to a tier 2 god. Well, then their stats no longer supported their divinity, and they would be eliminated. Essentially, this meant that every player was at their most vulnerable when they had just ascended to a new tier. A tier 2 god close to reaching the next tier might take 3 or 4 deaths for them to actually die and be banned. But a brand new tier 3 god would be eliminated from receiving even one death. Colt felt a headache brewing when he realized how difficult this game would actually be. It was almost impossible to survive as a solo player. The format is definitely for professionals. Casual players won't stand a chance in this game. Colt's eyes briefly glittered when he thought about how huge this would be. This game would become a streaming sensation for sure. There would be no telling for the audience when their favorite players might get eliminated. It gave a sense of tension that they could not find anywhere else. The developers have been smart with this. The game obviously has a lifespan. It could be pretty short or quite long depending on how many people they invite to it at general release. Colt began to second-guess his plan to make money selling information on the game. It was apparent he could make more if he took it seriously instead. The problem was that he had no team behind him for support anymore. Wait, she didn't mention anything about guilds. Colt swore when he realized a piece of vital information was missing. It would definitely be what most teams would focus on. However, the question that they would all want to be answered was whether there was a limit on how many members they could have. If Colt had to guess, then he would say that there was. It's almost like an open tournament in a strange way. Which means that there must be prizes involved. Colt had been in the circuit for years, and games designed for competitions always had rewards available. Colt began to realize that he stumbled on a veritable treasure trove. Knowing this information even slightly earlier than the competition would give him a considerable edge. A few players had already fallen victim to thinking that they could revive infinitely and started with PK right away. That player who attacked me in the mortal realms is probably banned then. I wonder how many others have already become victims of this system. Now, you have received everything that I have to offer. You may take your time collecting the items in the chests, but be warned. The lost souls outside of this tomb will throw everything they have at you to try and seize the first flame fragment. Olivia said with an uncaring voice. What about the other two I came in with? Colt asked as he sensed that their conversation was almost over. They have been rewarded for their performance. Once you leave this room through the way you entered, you will find yourself back at the entrance to the tomb. I wish you luck, young god. May the heavens be forever in your favor. As Olivia finished that sentence, her phantom faded away, leaving Colt alone in the silent room. He sighed as he glanced around the room before choosing the first chest to open. Inside he found 8 gold coins. He felt a little underwhelmed by that as he stored them in his inventory. The next chest held several weapons, but the system marked them as quest items that he had to hand over to Jarxos. The same thing happened with the next couple of chests, which annoyed him. However, when he opened the last chest, he discovered a round shield inside. The shield was made of wood, with a silver rim around its edge and a protruding spike in the center. Common Scardian shield, +2 endurance, description. Common item once wielded by weak Scardian gods. Colt frowned when he read the description that came with it. It was almost as if the text was meant to piss him off by deliberately inferring that he was weak. Tell me something I don't know. Colt sighed. Indeed, he was weak when he considered the various powers that players could gain as they advanced through the tiers. The only question that lingered in his mind now was, how far could he go? Colt equipped the new shield as he bowed to the marble monument that now stood silent. The room definitely felt like a grave now. Colt then steeled himself for the fight that was to come. After all, he still had to make it out alive. Chapter 38. Suspicions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As Colt exited the room, he found himself staring at the blue doors they had first passed through. A loud sigh came from his left side, where Beans and Donna had been waiting for him. Colt cast his eyes over the pair of women and noticed that they, too, had some new equipment. Donna wore armor in the style of old Roman centurions, minus the helmet. While Beans had gained a long sword designed to make the blade look like a bird's wing with intricate feathers detailed in the metal. What took you so long? Neither of us could even make it past the first test, but we still got rewards. You can't have been fighting them for all of that time. What did you do? Go sightseeing. Donna complained as she eyed up Colt's new shield. Something like that. Colt shrugged his shoulders as he brushed off her questioning. Since they might end up as enemies at some point, it was prudent to keep the information he had gained to himself. Colt quickly pulled up his interface to double-check his current stats. Name. Exile, title. God of the Hearth, race. Local deity, human, tier. 0, level. 3, HP, 50/50ths, DP. 6 out of 6, strength. 5, +1, endurance. 8, +3, speed. 3, authority. 6, I have a total of 20.2 base stat points right now. With the 5 for the quest once we return to Jarxos, then I'll only need 3 more to hit level 4. Colt hummed as he thought about it. I wonder at what point you can reach tier 1. Naturally, this was what gripped Colt's interest right now. Everything in the game has been rather simple so far compared to everything else. So maybe level 10. Colt hoped that his guess was correct, but it could prove to be wishful thinking. So, did you heal as well? Beans asked with a hesitant voice as she studied Colt's face. Yeah, looks like it. But I've no idea when that happened. Colt thought about it and wondered if art happened during his exchange with Olivia and he had just missed the notification. If there ever was one anyway. Did you get what we need for the quest? Donna pressed when she noticed that Colt seemed to be reluctant to talk too much. She had the vague feeling that he had completed the tomb where they had failed at the first step. However, apart from the shield, she could not see any other new equipment on him. So what was the reward for actually completing the place? Colt noticed the suspicious look on Donna's face and decided to move things along before she overthought things. Let's go. I'm sure you want to get this quest over with as much as I do. Colt smiled before heading towards the door. Exile. Donna yelled when she realized that he was going to leave them behind if they did not move. Damn it. You'd think you were trying to hide something from us. I'm sure he wouldn't. Beans retorted even though she had her own doubts. But she preferred not to sour their relationship with Exile so soon. After all, everything in the game was still so new to them, and they had a lot to figure out. Come on, we'd better hurry before he really does leave us behind. Beans jogged up to Colt's side just as he was placing his hand on the blue doors. Donna soon joined them, but her grumbling never stopped. Colt glanced at her out of the corner of his eye and became wary of her. She had started to suspect him far too soon. Was it just a gut feeling? Or had the girls discovered some information themselves? As the doors began to turn transparent, their expressions turned grim. A wall of lost souls was standing there waiting for them. Shit. The mobs didn't reset. Colt cursed as he glanced at the tidal wave waiting to tear them apart. Get behind me. The girls frowned before doing what he said. Colt pulled his shield up to protect his front and aimed the spike at the lost soul right in front of him. Before the door entirely faded away, Colt activated his Hellfire spell. This gave the two women an extra point of endurance each as long as they stayed within 10 m of him, which should not be hard. Colt grinned as soon as the barrier dissipated. He lashed out savagely with his shield and destroyed the poor soul in a single strike. Lost soul, weakened. 37 out of 100, when Colt saw the notification, he wondered if he could complete the milestone before they reached the surface. However, that might prove challenging to do while making sure the girls survived. Beans slashed at the souls, who tried to move around Colt's side. Colt paid attention to the fact that she could now kill them in a single strike as well. Beans was the weakest member of the group and had needed at least 2 strikes on the way down here before dispatching one of them. That weapon seems to be pretty good, Colt remarked as Donna tanked a strike on her end. In Colt's perception, Donna's health only decreased by 1 point. They both really benefited from this. Colt could only sigh and shake his head at that sight. It would have been ideal if they only received the stat point reward at the quest's end. He did not like the idea of strengthening the other members of this temporary alliance, especially with the knowledge that he now had. Colt drove forward, destroying one soul after another as the girls covered his flanks. The real struggle came when they reached the foot of the staircase because now they were completely surrounded. Bean's health kept dipping as she exchanged blows with the mobs. This forced Colt to use campfire twice, bringing his DP down to March 6 just to keep her alive. Luckily, by that point, Bean's health stabilized at 50% since all of the enemies behind the group had been taken care of. All that remained were the ones blocking their path forward, but they could not get around Colt's defense at all. Lost soul, weakened. 40 out of 100, 45 out of 100, 56/100, 70/100, 99/100. Chapter 39. Speculations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Milestone reached. Milestone updated, lost soul, weakened. 100/200. You have received +1 stat point. Colt heaved a sigh of relief as he finally reached the top of the staircase. A few of the lost souls had fallen over the edge, but he had been careful enough to make sure that enough remained to reach the milestone goal. Another stat point. What should I dump it into? Colt decided to wait until they at least got out of here first before he gave any of his stats an upgrade. There was no telling if any more mobs were hiding in the dirt walls of the staircase after all. So what now? How do we get this thing to open? Donna asked as she eyed Colt skeptically. Beans wore a concerned expression on her face as she glanced over the edge of the stairs. She could see the lost souls that had fallen making their way back up. At this rate, it would not take long for them to arrive at their position. Don't worry about it, Colt smirked as he looked at this side of the horizontal doors. Eventually, he found what he was looking for. It was the hole that he had inserted his finger into when they were on the other side. It would have taken longer to find if Colt did not have prior knowledge about this trick of the developers. The hole was situated next to the dirt wall. Colt quickly moved over beside it and ran his hand over the rough, gritty dirt. There you are. He felt a small smooth area in the dirt. This was the button that unlocked the doors, so Colt made sure to hide what he was doing from the women behind him. The pair frowned at his back before they heard a clicking noise, which was soon followed by the grinding that came with stone rubbing on stone. Beans bounced on the tips of her toes as if the doors could not open fast enough. The second that sunlight streamed in and the gap in the gates were large enough, Beans jumped up onto the ground outside. Donna shook her head at her friend's antics. She was overreacting to the mobs and was evidently afraid that they might kill her. It was one thing to have to fight your way out, but if you had a choice to make it out with your gains safely, most gamers would take that option. Lest they lose more than they bargained for because they were too confident or greedy. Colt and Donna quickly joined her as the lost souls howled in outrage. Looking down into the pit with the lost souls rushing up from its depths made it feel like they were looking at a staircase to hell. The three of them could not be happier to see the doors closing behind them. Just as they slammed shut, several hands had attempted to reach through the gap to grab them. Needless to say, these blackened limbs now lay severed on top of the sealed tomb. Only Donna did not flinch at the sight before the limbs faded into motes of light. Bean sighed in relief now that the threat was gone. Moments later, she broke into a wide grin. Woohoo! I can't believe we did it. Do you think we're the first to raid a tomb? Colt chuckled when he heard her. It's hard to say. Maybe we're the first around here, but I doubt we're the first in the whole game. What makes you say that? Donna honestly looked surprised as she raised an eyebrow at his comment. There are just too many unknowns. Like for example, we have no idea exactly who amongst the famous gamers are playing the beta. There's a few I can think of that specialize in speedrunning as much in the early days as they can. In all honesty, I expect that if even one of them is in the game that they may already be level 5. Colt's mind wandered to a few of the other people he had competed against in the pro circuit. Then there's the pro and amateur teams. You can't underestimate how quickly they can unearth secrets as well due to the amount of manpower they have compared to us. Colt continued after pausing for a moment. To top it off, we don't know what the situation is like for the other races that we could have chosen. All I've seen are fellow human players so far. Donna tilted her head as she thought about it before realizing that he was right. Does that mean that each race has their own starting area in the Divine Realms too? Of course, don't you remember the map when we first entered the game? I doubt we'll be seeing anyone from the other races for a while. Especially since we don't know where exactly in the human divine realm that Valheim is located. Colt hummed as he thought about something else. What sub-race did you two choose? Scardian. They both replied in unison, causing Colt to frown. It seems like we might even be divided by sub-race. Colt's eyes narrowed as he realized what that actually meant. Damn. Everyone here is our biggest competitors to build a foundation for our divinity. It should be easier to convince the Scardians to believe in us since we're one of them. Colt quickly turned his attention towards Valheim in the distance. It seems like we might need to buy some information from those who explored the city. There's a good chance it has other functions that we don't know of yet. By the way, Colt began as he glanced at the two women. Do either of you know anything about registering a guild in this game? Why? You trying to recruit us or something? Donna asked suspiciously with a frown on her face. I don't think that's a bad idea. Beans replied to Donna's comment as she absent-mindedly stroked her chin. But, no. We haven't found anything related to that. Chapter 40. Interception. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Colt sighed again. He had not foreseen a positive answer anyhow, but it did not hurt to ask. Forget it, we should go back to Valheim for now. We have to turn in the quest, then we can think about what we'll do from there. As they started their descent, Colt pulled up his stat page and tried to decide where to put his new stat point. My speed is falling behind. So maybe I should go with that. Colt hesitated for a moment. If he were being honest with himself, he would prefer to stick it in authority. But he knew too well how badly things would go if someone had a severe imbalance in their stats. After deliberating on it for a good few minutes, he increased his speed. His pace increased as he felt like his body had become lighter. The women noticed he was catching up to them, and Donna narrowed her eyes. I'm sure we lowered our pace enough to match his. Don't tell me he got another stat point. Donna groaned to herself when she realized Exile had widened the gap between them again. As far as they were aware, Exile was the highest level player in Valheim right now. She hoped to keep him around, to use his strength to allow her and Beans to advance faster. Then when they caught up, they could split from Exile and overtake him. He'd be worth ambushing if I could convince Beans to help. But she's too kind. I wonder how many points we could gain if we seized his orb. Donna thought, as she eyed Exile. Forget it. Who knows how many times he can heal before he runs dry. Then there's the question of if we can even harm him. His endurance seems to be his strongest stat. When the trio were about halfway down the mountain, Colt stopped and stared at the forest. Beans glanced back with a look of confusion upon her face before tapping Donna's shoulder to get her attention. Beans pointed to Exile, who was standing still with a grave expression on his face. Exile. What's wrong? Beans asked in a concerned tone. Kaleidoscope. Colt replied in a grim tone as he continued trying to count the figures he would spot from time to time between the trees. There's at least 7 of them. Eri is amongst them too. The women froze when they heard that and scanned the forest for themselves. But Exile's warning was on point. There was indeed a group of players headed in their direction. Do we fight them? Donna asked, even though she had her own misgivings. From what they had seen so far, this was not the type of game where a lead of a level or two would allow a player to suppress entire armies. Each increase in strength was only marginal. No. Colt shook his head as he began searching for other, safer routes. There's too many of them. We don't know how they've distributed their stats or what spells they might have. And you two don't have any combat spells at all since you haven't upgraded your authority. He's calm and collected. Most guys become all hot-headed and brash when someone challenges them like this. Exile's image had just went up a notch in Donna's mind as she waited for him to decide what they should do. We'll go this way. Colt pointed towards a rocky area in the forest. The uneven ground will help to break their line of sight with us. However, we're exposed here right now, so they'll notice that we've changed direction. With that said, Colt started sprinting towards the area he had pointed at. The pair of women followed behind, and all three of them noticed Kaleidoscope's team change direction shortly after. They're definitely trying to intercept us. Colt frowned as he tried to plan out their next move. With my speed level being what it is, I can't outrun them. My only choices for now is to hide and proceed cautiously or to fight. But fighting would be suicide unless we can ambush one or two of them at a time. The more that Colt thought about it, the more convinced he became they would have to use guerrilla warfare to facilitate their escape. He was not willing to sacrifice his hard-earned gains just to save some face. That was just the height of stupidity. It was far better to understand your limits and plan for them. That was how someone got stronger. That still held true in video games. Throwing away your hard work for pride would cost you days, or even weeks, to recover from. You would never reach the higher levels as quickly as you could have by doing such a thing. That's why he hated captains like Eri. She did not hesitate to throw her team members' lives away just to gain more benefits for herself. There was one incident in particular in the game Mayhem that had rubbed Colt the wrong way. His team had discovered a hidden boss in the game world, but after testing it out, he concluded that at least 70% of his team would have wiped to kill it. It would have taken these players around 2 months to recover from a death, so he decided it was not worth it at all. They could always return once they got stronger. However, Kaleidoscope had a spy on Colt's team. Eri set out for the boss's location as soon as she received word about it with 100 members of her own team. This included the pros, AMs, and even those used as simple fodder. When Colt heard about it, he returned to the site in time to see the boss die. However, despite what they had received for killing the boss, the losses were just too great in Colt's eyes. Only Eri and 3 others survived the encounter. What made the whole thing worse was that every item they received only benefited Eri's class. And now it looks like she's willing to do the same right now. Colt's eyes moved to the team that was tracking them. She doesn't care how many of her team die as long as she can claim our treasures.